What is up, YouTube? Let's look at making a multi-sampled bass patch for Falcon. So the idea is we're going to take the bass sound that I made in a previous tutorial and we're going to create a multi-sampled patch for Falcon over a variety of different keys so we can use it in various projects. The plus side about creating a multi-sample bass patch is every time you trigger the sound, it's going to have the exact same phase. So you're not going to have to deal with issues. You're going to get a much tighter sound when using a multi-sampled bass patch. The reason I held off on creating a tutorial on multi-samples for so long, I was pretty underwhelmed with most of the samplers on the market, so I never bothered to make any patches for myself. I would just kind of create audio clips for each project as I was going. But then as I'm diving more and more into Falcon, I'm finding that specifically for creating multi-sample patches, the engine is amazingly easy. You can drag and drop samples directly from Cubase and stuff like that. So I'm not going to talk too much in the intro. We're just going to dive into the project and I'm going to show you guys what I'm talking about. The bass patch that I've got there is pretty similar to the one that I created in the sort of cancelled fundamental tutorial. So I'm going to post a link in the top corner if you want to go ahead and create this bass patch yourself. There's just some light sort of processing and stuff on the patch itself, but we don't have to dig too deep into it for this episode. The idea is what I want to do is I want to sample this sound out over a variety of different keys and then load those into Falcon and we can sort of start tweaking with different settings in Falcon to get the best results. So this is the bass sound. So first things first, if we've got any sidechain or any kind of processing like that on the bass sound, we're going to want to turn it off. I don't have any sidechain on here. I think in the patch I had sidechain, but I've removed it now. Also, in one of my previous tutorials, I did mention, applying EQ onto the harmonics of the sound. So you're going to want to maybe turn those off because we can then reapply those inside Falcon on the different keys having different EQs and stuff like that. So if you've got any kind of note-based EQ going on, you're going to want to turn either those nodes off or the entire EQ off. But I'm going to leave the EQ on because I want to still have that sort of sound shaping, that kind of overall shaping that's going on. Because what's happened now is obviously when I change the key of the bass, the EQ is going to have to be sort of reapplied in a different harmonic. So now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm actually just going to remove all of these. I mean, the lowest that this patch is probably going to allow me to go down to is, I would say, A1. So what we can do is we can create maybe 2 octaves of this bass sound starting at A. We're just going to want to remember that. You can just lay these MIDI notes out like this, sort of progressively up until we've reached let's say 2 octaves, apart from maybe some higher notes here and there. So we'll want to throw those in. That's not actually an A that I've started on, so that's an A. Just going to put a few extra in case we do want to put some like higher notes and stuff like that in. The cool thing about Falcon is, like I said earlier, you can just drag and drop once you've got the single samples, you can just drag and drop it, so it becomes very easy. But actually what I want to do is I want to create a little gap in between each one to create some fade out. And then one thing I like to remember to do here is I want to turn the volume up to 0. And you might want to turn your monitors down now, just in case you kind of blow them when you click on one of the MIDI notes or something. This enables you to get a sort of full gain sample into your sampler. And that allows you a little bit more sort of dynamic control in the long term. So you're going to want to turn that volume to all the way up to 0 before bouncing it out or before rendering it out. So then let's go ahead here and render. So we got our first sort of sound across the octaves. But now what I want to do is I want to create a couple of variations, maybe some filter variations, which we can trigger maybe using the velocity or different, parameters within Falcon. So let's move this sample that we created along a little bit and then unmute this. And let's go ahead and just move the filter. Maybe let's change the decay of the sound. So we've created 2 variations. We're going to have one that's just the regular sound, and then we have one with a more opened filter cutoff and decay sound, which we can use for a harder velocity sound if we want. And you can create as many variations as you want to layer over different velocities and stuff. But just for the simplicity of this tutorial, I'm just going to use the 2. Let's move on to getting these sounds into Falcon. So before we go ahead and drop these samples into Falcon, we're going to want to chop them up. And so what's happened is, if we zoom right in over here, we'll notice that because of like the processing and stuff on the sound, dynamics processing and stuff like that, sometimes there's going to be a little bit of a delay at the beginning of the signal. So before I chop the sample into its little bits, I like to just drag it, hold control and drag it so that this first transient that you see here is just after the line. That's not actually clipping, just in case you guys are gonna flame those comments. It's not actually clipping, just so you guys are aware. You can actually just zoom in. It makes it easier to see where that first transient is. So then let's chop and then choose beat and then hold alt and chop again, and it's gonna basically chop our sample into all its different pieces. So now we can actually just select these all. Let's move over to Falcon over here, open up our mapping, and we started at A1, if I remember correctly. So let's move over and drop these at A1. So depending on where you drop it, vertically in this sort of panel, it's going to span out the samples, which we actually don't want. So as you see, as you move up, it's going to span the samples up, but we don't want that because we don't want any pitch shifting to be applied to the samples. We just want to hear that raw sample when we hit that key. So we want to drag the sound all the way to the bottom like this, and then let go. And now Falcon's created our multi-sample patch for us. We can just highlight them all and drag this down, let's say to there. And we're going to want to do the same with the sample we made. We can just shift it across like I explained earlier, and then chop it on every beat. So now what's happening is the velocity is still controlling the volume of the sound within Falcon, and we don't want that because we just want to use the velocity to control what sound is being played. So we can go over here to the gain, right click, go edit modulations. Over here, velocity sensitivity we can set to 0, velocity amount we can set to 0. Now, what we can do is we can go and, it's not going to really be applicable for this project, obviously, because the key is already specific. But what I want to do is I want to go into the G key here and tweak the EQ a little bit to fit the key of the track. And then I'm going to save the patch. And then as I'm working through other projects that are different keys, I'm going to tweak the EQ to fit that key, then save the preset. And eventually I'll build up a sort of a patch that's, I can just recall at any moment, tweak a few things here and there, the decay, the cutoff, maybe apply a filter, and it's just an incredibly solid sound from the get-go. So this is a very cool way to create something like that, because now, I can just save this, open it up in a different project, and I've got that same solid bass sound, but I can change the key as I want. I can apply different effects and stuff like that. I can still change the sidechain settings and stuff like that. It's not like a loop that I'm kind of stuck with. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tweak these EQ a little bit for you guys, just to show you what I was talking about in terms of removing those harmonics. So once we've got all the samples in, we're going to want to go to this, and we want to apply an EQ to just that one note. We can go to this key group section over here and click FX, go to Equalizer, and let's put an 8-band EQ onto that key group. Then let's set these peaks over here. I believe the first one should be, I think it's like 98 hertz is the same harmonic as G, and then 200 hertz. And then we can actually just tweak these a little bit while the sound is playing. But bear in mind, this preset that I'm making is kind of like a work in progress. So this is kind of something that you create that's going to be sort of your sound that you can tweak as you go. So, this doesn't have to be perfect from the get-go. As you kind of create other tracks, you can kind of get it to sound better and better. And as you reference alongside other material and stuff, you can get it to sound better and better. Some things to consider here is you probably want to turn this play mode to mono retrigger. Otherwise, you might have like overlaps and stuff like that. You can play with the amp envelopes over here. You can create filter envelopes as well on top of the sound. So say, for example, we put on a filter here. On this layers mode, on this layers section, it's going to apply to all of our key groups. So let's say, for example, I'm going to change the notes of this bass. So let's do like a bit of a groove. So that filter will apply to all of the key groups. So say, for example, now we want to start applying EQ to some of those other notes that we're playing. So how we do that is we click these little 3 lines over here, and we get a drop-down menu, and we can either just copy to clipboard, or we can save it. Let's actually just copy to clipboard. It'll be easier, so we don't have to go about creating a whole new file if we might come and tweak this at a later stage. So then let's find the next key group that we want to tweak. This guy, let's go and add a equalizer to this key group. And then we can actually just go here, paste from clipboard, and boom, we've done that. And then we can just move these up to whichever harmonics correlates with that sound. I'm just going to estimate and put like 120, let's say 230 and 475 or something. It's just guesses. So yeah, you guys get the picture. I'm going to play it so you can hear again what it sounds like. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you already make multi-sampled bass patches, then let me know what software you guys are using to achieve that sound. A big thanks to IDM Mag, proud supporters of the dance music scene and my channel. Unfortunately, like I said, this patch is a work in progress, and it's going to take a little bit more tweaking to get all of those keys sounding good and to get everything sort of up to scratch. So I'm not going to be able to post this to my Patreon yet. That being said, as soon as I do get it to something that I am 100% happy with, I'm definitely going to be posting it to my Patreon for you guys. Also, just want to know sort of how many of you guys are using Falcon, just to know if it's worth, getting into creating more tutorials and creating more patches and presets and stuff for Falcon. So also definitely let me know in the comments. As always, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. See you guys next time.